Hello, welcome back. My name is Will. How are all of you? I know I say that in every video. So, what have I got in front of me? I have a stack of books that's rather large, and I want to talk about fantasy novels. And I've done this before where I do like a list of writers or fantasy novels or whatever in a particular genre that you need to read. So, here's my list. These are fantasy novels. So this is fantasy, and I've picked books from the spectrum of fantasy. Every type of fantasy, from the loosest sense of fantasy to the more higher fantasy. So a nice smorgasbord. So the first two are by the same writer, the brilliant Antoine. So we have the Keshe and By Sea and Sky. And he's a good writer. He has a backbone, he has strong characters, his world is rich and convincing. He's setting, these books take place in the same universe, and he's got some stuff that's available as shorts. He's definitely worth reading, and if you haven't read his work, where have you been? It's kind of tragic, but I feel like the book community online would be all over this guy if he was like published by Random House or Titan or something. Which is a shame, because he is phenomenal. It's writers like him we need to support more, in the sense of unique fantasy novels that don't tend to get a lot of hype when trash like Prior of the Orange Tree becomes overhyped and awful. Books that are genuinely brilliant don't get any love. Mermaid Moon. Now we're in the more YA side of fantasy. So Mermaid Moon is the story of the Little Mermaid. She fashions herself legs, and there's the characters and her development. This is quite a dark fantasy. I love these kind of rich, flowing worlds. And by the way, how pretty is this cover? I don't really know if this counts as a YA novel either. It's just, it exists, and it's a beautiful book. And it follows a strong, archetypal female character who is flawed, who is emotional, who needs to travel, and who needs to save her kingdom and her people. That's what this is about, and it's beautiful. This is fantasy in a more classical sense. It's beautifully written. Do check out Mermaid Moon. Nevernight by Jay Kristoff. Now we're in the dark action fantasy. I will say Jay is a flawed writer. He's not perfect. But progressively, as each one of the Nevernight series goes on, the 3 books, they get better written. Like, his writing evolves from book to book to book, and they are gorgeous. Mia, the character, is spectacular and just brilliantly written and feels very real. There's a lot of Aussie stuff in this that's hilarious, and if you like Renaissance Italy, you will love this. Think kind of a fantasy Assassin's Creed type thing. And if you'll know exactly when you read it, Mr. Kindly is amazing. I'm like, why has this not been turned into a film or a television series? Like, this would be amazing as like a Netflix original. The Binding by Bridget Collins. Now, The Binding. I was very lucky. I went to see her at the Derby Book Festival. So this is signed. This is a beautiful signed edition. There's my book festival ticket. So this takes place in alternative 1900s, where you can put all of your memories, good or bad, into a book and forget them, and other people can read them and you can read them. Bookbinders who do this are not trusted, and this boy gets apprenticed to a bookbinder. He finds this book with his name on it. This is what we call the kissing book. It's definitely the looser end of fantasy. This is more magical realism, but it's brilliantly written. It's great. It's her first adult novel. And it's a thing of beauty. But also, as a writer, she's spectacular, and I can't wait for more from her. Absolutely fantastic. Gorgeous book. Do check out The Binding. The Oyster Thief. Now, this was sent to me by the writer. Now, this one is another mermaid book. But this deals with 2 parallel stories, both human and of the mer people. And it's a really strong, nice, dark fantasy that kind of, in a weird way, reminds me of Nevernight in that sense. It's dark fantasy. It's not a soft book. And it's brilliant. Like, the writing, the characters. It's memorable. I adore them. And the writer is rather special too. Really good. Just genuinely a good writer that surprised me. I have a weakness for mermaids. What can I say? Finally, 2 by the same writer, Mary Conrad. Now, she's a British fantasy writer that only published 3 books. She's published a non-fiction, which is about her struggles with mental health, which actually explains why she took a long hiatus. I read these when I was a teenager, and these are big, high fantasy novels with a lot of action and great writing. I have to say, I have a weakness for covers of like the 90s fantasy novels because they're pretty. They're oddly hard to get. I know they're available on ebook. So if you go on to Kindle or Kobo or whatever, I know they're available worldwide on ebook. Physical books are more difficult to come by, and you can't get them. These aren't in print anymore, which is a tragedy. She's phenomenal, and I'm absolutely depressed she never wrote more than 3 books, but these 2 that I have at hand. So these are Imperial Light and Dark Fell. So do check out her work. You might have to go through digital to get them, but definitely worth checking out. As always, tell me what you think in the comments below. I want to know any you would add to this list, like any fantasy novels you think that I should check out or try.